I came home after my shift and saw concrete barriers blocking my garage. A sign on the door read, $50 fine, access restricted. I called the HOA president and she coldly said, "Rules are rules." But they didn't know I was the chief of police, and I wasn't about to let this slide. But let's start from the beginning. I'm the chief of police. Throughout my career, I've dealt with gangsters, corrupt officials, and con artists of every kind. I've seen my fair share of deception and abuse of power. But you know what pissed me off the most? The HOA. I had just finished a 14-hour shift. The city was boiling. Accidents on the roads, 2 back-to-back robberies, neighbor disputes, and then a 3-hour report for the mayor. I was so drained, I didn't even feel like speaking. All I wanted was a hot shower, a cold beer, and to be left the hell alone. But the moment I turned onto my street, my exhaustion vanished. I saw it. My garage was blocked. Concrete barriers. 3 damn concrete blocks stood between me and my home. A sign was hanging on the garage door. Unpaid fine, access restricted. I turned off the engine and just sat there for a few seconds, trying to process it. My heart pounded in my temples. Anger burned in my chest. A fine? What fine? I jumped out of the car and walked up to the sign. In small print it read, "As per HOA regulations, your garage is restricted until the full payment of a $50 fine is received." $50. They blocked my own garage over a $50 fine. I ran a hand over my face, trying to keep my temper in check. Who would have thought that after a full day of fighting crime, my biggest battle would be against my own homeowners association? I pulled out my phone and dialed the HOA president, Cynthia Benson. "Cynthia, what the hell? Why is my garage blocked?" "Oh, Mr. Lawrence." Her voice was sickeningly sweet. "What a pleasure to hear from you." "Answer me." "Oh, well, it's very simple. You haven't paid your HOA fine for violating regulations." I clenched my phone tighter. "What fine?" "Your shutters." Her tone turned condescending. "They're too dark. HOA requires all exteriors to comply with the approved color palette." I froze. Was she serious? "You're telling me you blocked my garage over the damn shade of my shutters?" "Well, Mr. Lawrence, rules are rules. You should respect them." My breathing grew heavy. "Cynthia, this is my house." "Yes, but you live in a community where everyone follows the same standards. These standards create order, you see? Listen to me carefully. You're going to remove those damn barriers right now or... Beep, beep, beep." She hung up. For a moment, I just stared at my phone in disbelief. Then my fists clenched. If they thought I was just going to let this go, they were dead wrong. I woke up early, still fuming. My dreams were a mess. Concrete barriers, Cynthia Benson's smug smile, her voice echoing. Rules are rules. But I wasn't just going to let this go. I got in my car and drove to the HOA office, a small but fancy building, a symbol of their petty, authoritarian power. Everything about it screamed bureaucracy. A perfectly manicured lawn, spotless windows, neatly marked parking spaces. No sign of humanity. I stepped inside. The reception smelled like cheap coffee, and I was instantly greeted by the obnoxious sound of chewing. The girl at the front desk was lazily smacking gum, her eyes glued to her phone. "I need to speak with the president." I kept my irritation in check. She didn't even look up. "She's busy. Tell her to make time. Sign up." She lazily nodded toward a stack of forms. "I need to speak with her now." She finally looked up at me, dragging out her words. "The next available appointment is in 3 weeks." I exhaled sharply. "Listen," I leaned in slightly. "I'm the chief of police. My garage was illegally blocked. I demand a meeting." She shrugged. "Sign up. That's how we do things here." I clenched my jaw. They were mocking me. I turned and walked out, but as I reached the door, I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. "They got you too?" A rough, weathered voice. I turned to see George, my elderly neighbor, a retired Army vet pushing 80 years old. Always standing tall, his silver hair neatly combed back, but his eyes held exhaustion, frustration, and helplessness. "They blocked my garage," I muttered, narrowing my eyes. "Over some ridiculous fine." George let out a bitter chuckle. "They do it to everyone. First, they hit you with little fines. If you don't pay, they start turning the screws." "Turning the screws?" He nodded. "I'm 79 years old. I've lived here for 15 years, and they've bled me for thousands of dollars. It starts small. Grass too long, shutters the wrong shade, trash bin in the wrong place. I tried to fight back. And they shut off my water." I felt my fists tighten. "They have no right to do that. And who do I complain to? The courts?" He scoffed. "They have an army of lawyers. I have a $2,200 a month pension. I'm tired, son." I ran a hand down my face. It all clicked. The HOA wasn't a homeowners association. It was a racket, a criminal operation hiding behind paperwork, and there was no way in hell I was going to let it continue. I spent the entire night at my kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of printouts, open state law documents, and my laptop, its search bar blinking. HOA, Illegal Property Restrictions, California. The deeper I dug, the more my frustration grew. These people, these bureaucrats in designer suits, thought they could bully residents, threaten them, intimidate them, ruin lives just because most people didn't want to fight back. But they forgot one thing. I'm not most people, and I found their mistake. Under California law, a homeowners association has no legal right to block access to private property. Their attempt to barricade my garage fell under criminal unlawful deprivation of property, but the real gold was buried in their own bylaws. Section 12.3. Any illegal action by the HOA automatically renders all of its decisions null and void. I slowly leaned back in my chair and smirked. They dug their own grave. The next morning, I walked into the HOA office again. Same sterile lobby, same bored receptionist lazily scrolling through her phone. But when I stepped into Cynthia Benson's office, she didn't look so smug anymore. "Oh, Mr. Lawrence, back again?" she asked with a strained smile. I walked up to her desk and dropped a thick stack of papers in front of her. "Oh, yeah. And today, I've got great news for you." She glanced at the documents, and the confidence vanished from her face. "What is this?" "This is your crime." I leaned in, both palms on her desk. "Under state law, your actions are illegal, and according to Section 12.3 of your own bylaws, any unlawful measure makes all HOA rulings null and void." She swallowed hard. This must be a mistake." I leaned in closer. "No, Cynthia. This is a criminal offense." Her eyes flickered with panic. Her hands trembled. "But we were following the rules." "You broke the law, and now you have two choices. Either you remove those barriers immediately or I press criminal charges." She slowly lifted her eyes to mine. "You're not actually going to—" "I already sent the paperwork to the district attorney." I expected her to fight back, to make one last excuse. But she didn't. Her face went pale. Her lips quivered. She reached for her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed a number. "Remove the barriers at Mr. Lawrence's property, immediately." I smirked. That's what I thought. The morning was quiet. I stood by my window, coffee in hand, listening to the faint chirping of birds in the distance, but the silence felt different, too peaceful. And then I saw it. The concrete barriers were gone. They had removed them overnight. No warnings, no letters, no fake apologies. They were just gone. I set my coffee down and stepped outside. George was already on my porch, waiting for me. Behind him, more neighbors gathered, people I'd seen for years but barely spoken to. Today, their faces were glowing. "We heard what you did!" George clapped me on the shoulder. "You took those bastards down!" I nodded. They backed themselves into a corner. I just helped them realize it. The crowd buzzed with excitement. People laughed, shared stories. They spoke about years of fines, threats, and intimidation, about how they had lived in fear, wondering if they'd be next. But now, fear was gone. A week later, Cynthia resigned. Word was, she left town entirely, vanished as if she had never existed. The HOA tried to push back, but no one feared them anymore. And a month later, we held a vote. Unanimous decision. The HOA was dissolved. I stood in front of my now free garage, looking at my home, feeling something I rarely got to feel in this job. True satisfaction. I hadn't just fought for my rights. I had freed an entire neighborhood, and it was the greatest victory of my career.